It was so relaxing to be able to only stress out about the Philadelphia Phillies. Of all the years for Howie Roseman to decide, I am now going to pay a running back, I'm really glad it's this year, because if this is the way the NFL is trending, I like when my team is ahead of the curve. The Detroit Tigers, they are a fun team playing above their head right now, and they really do have the magic that everyone thinks the Mets have.
Recording from New York and Los Angeles, your hosts, Nicole Katz and Brianna Klein, are emerging from the tunnel for this week's show. Another sports show is ready to broadcast to you on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Make us one of your stars of the game by subscribing, liking the video, and turning on auto downloads. Before we kick off, please leave us a podcast review and YouTube comment. Attend the postgame on social media for exclusive daily content. Today on Another Sports Show.
Nicole is still out on vacation, but we got a more normal episode of Another Sports Show for you today. AKA, I have a voice that's not groggily and just barely hanging on. We start with some Tuesday morning overreactions about the NFL, where I decide which NFL teams are actually good after most of the teams have not looked so great to start the season. And then we take a look at early season NFL trends. Why is the middle class of quarterbacks really lighting it up right now? And is passing down across the NFL, and why? After a week that was filled with many international games across multiple sports, I take a look at what makes a good and successful international game for an American fan's viewing enjoyment. I hold off on screaming about the Mets and Phillies to talk about the other three series that are going on. Touch base on Bobby Witt Jr.'s playoff debut, scream about the Detroit team having a magical run into the divisional matchups, and then I talk about everything that happened in Game 2 of that San Diego Dodgers game. Of course, I talk Game 1 as well, but it's fresh in my mind what I watched last night. And then I show you all my fan underbelly and the stress that the Mets-Phillies series has been causing me. The NHL regular season is here, so we take a look at specifically the Boston Bruins and the Colorado Avalanche for this upcoming week of regular season NHL action. And I give you a rapid-fire hot takes for college football after a week of so many upsets. Asking the question, is there truly a dominant team in college football this year? And would we want there to be one? And with that, take it away, voiceover man.
It's another sports show, but it's not Monday morning, Tuesday, NFL overreaction.
There are three big picture topics that I really want to discuss with you all this week about early trends in the NFL. Starting with, are any of these NFL teams actually good? And I thought the perfect way to start these Tuesday morning overreactions would be a podium of just that. Which NFL teams do I think are actually good?
A bonus mention.
The Minnesota Vikings. Now, this is an honorable mention because I wasn't confident enough to put them on the podium, but they do look like the best team in the NFC if the playoffs started today. And of course, there's so much more football left to happen. These would be the teams in seeding order that would be playing in the NFC. The Minnesota Vikings, the Washington Commanders, second seed, the Atlanta Falcons, the Seattle Seahawks, the Detroit Lions, to be clear, wild card, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Dallas Cowboys. And the Dallas Cowboys snuck in there because they beat Pittsburgh last night on Sunday Night Football, probably after all of us went to bed. So where I've landed on the Minnesota Vikings is I will just believe they're good until they tell me otherwise, because every game, even if it's not pretty, even if Sam Darnold has a bad game, they're finding ways to win games. And in the NFL, that's always important, and seemingly in this year, this seems extra important. And let's get into the actual podium.
In P3,
the Baltimore Ravens. Yes, I know the Baltimore Ravens needed overtime to beat the Cincinnati Bengals. But when I watch them play, they look good. And so much of is a team actually good right now does it pass the eye test for me? And the Baltimore Ravens passed the eye test for me.
In P2,
the Buffalo Bills. See eye test comment. They're going to win this division, and they're going to look like themselves and make a deep run in the playoffs. Josh Allen is that dude.
In P1.
And it's probably not exciting to say that the Kansas City Chiefs are the team I can confidently say are actually good. Patrick Mahomes, They're undefeated at the point of recording this. We'll see if they win on Monday night. They're not going to go undefeated, but they look fine. They look actually good.
Why is the middle-class quarterback lighting up the NFL right now?
We are 2 years past Geno Smith becoming a good quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks. We are watching Sam Darnold be a good quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings right now. Baker Mayfield is over there in Tampa Bay and looking like Baker always looks, but I think he falls into this quote-unquote veteran middle class. We've also seen Andy Dalton come in for Bryce Young and immediately make the Carolina Panthers look more competent. We've seen Joe Flacco do similar things for the Colts, taking over for Richardson when he got hurt. So I think this is an interesting conversation to have because it all gets down to what a team that is building is willing to sacrifice on. And there's only one Patrick Mahomes. And then there's the tier below him that is still an incredible quarterback. You have the Josh Allens, you have the Lamar Jacksons, you have the Joe Burrows. But there are a lot of teams in the league, particularly over in the NFC, who are making the decision to not bottom out and go for that life-changing draft pick, drafting that quarterback number 1 overall. But they're going with this middle class of quarterback right now who's a veteran. And I think, and we are seeing them be successful. And a big reason why this is happening is because NFL offenses are more dependent than ever on quick, fast decision-making. And that is a skill that is really hard to develop. It takes a lot of time. So rookie quarterbacks are more likely than not going to come in, and if they need to read a defense and make that immediate, quick, fast decision, they're going to fall short. And the rookie quarterbacks that are mobile on their feet, like Jaden Daniels over in Washington, can kind of bail themselves out of that situation, and they look better their rookie year. Now, of course, there's anomalies to all of this. Like CJ Stroud looks incredible, was able to very quickly make fast decisions in the pocket. Andy Dalton's able to come in, and with all of his years of experience, is able to understand and process the field and make that decision really fast. And he's going to look better than Bryce Young, of course. Also, with defenses playing more and more cover 2, trying to limit the big play, particularly in the regular season, it makes sense that if you can get a quarterback that can process quickly, make quick decisions, then they are going to look really good based on how defenses are currently playing and the speed of the game. Now, I do think that playoffs change the game. Playoffs are when you have the difference maker quarterback who can, even outside of Patrick Mahomes, like you have the Josh Allens, he can go and win you a game. And that's going to be incredibly important in the playoffs. You know, we have seen Geno Smith and the Seattle Seahawks kind of fall short, where 2 years ago he had this great regular season, and that didn't really make a difference at the end of the playoffs. But week to week, if you find yourself going, why does Sam Darnold look incredible when he didn't before? Why is Baker Mayfield lighting up the world? And you have Geno Smith over here, and look, Joe Flacco came in again and still looks like a good, serviceable quarterback. All of these things come down to, if you are a quarterback with a lot of knowledge that can quickly process what you're seeing and make a decision in under 2.5 seconds, that really makes an impact and a difference. I also think this entire trend is exaggerated by the fact that there is no preseason. We have essentially watched most of these young quarterbacks go through their preseason in the regular season. And I'm not going to sit here and bang the drum that Sam Darnold looked great this week. But you can see the time he has spent as a backup learning. And that is why he's, of course, better now than he was on the Jets. There's also the factor that he was on the Jets. I think all of this is a reminder that if you're going to invest a high pick in a rookie quarterback, they're going to struggle, and they're going to struggle for many years, because the NFL is all about how fast can you process. So really, in my opinion, NFL teams should look into sitting their quarterbacks for a couple years, put them behind a veteran for a couple years so they can learn how to read defenses, play them as much as possible in the preseason. And if you're going to start a rookie quarterback, patience. Patience is going to be key. Or someone else, maybe the Minnesota Vikings, will be reaping the rewards of that quarterback you drafted and tried to invest in.
Why is passing down in the NFL this season?
So I think step one with this question is that actually true? Is rushing up, is passing down? A lot of this was brought on by week one, where there were a lot of headlines about both of those things being true. And when I dug into the data, the answer is sort of. It is sort of true. Because the reality with everything in the NFL is when you take an aggregate of everything going on, it's hard this early on in the season, and definitely with the small sample size of week one, to fully identify if this is the case. And it's something that I think we'll need to look back on at the end of the season. But for now, 14 of 32 teams have actually passed more this season, where their percentage of plays run to pass is higher for pass than it was last year. And you can easily say, well, that's less than half the league. But it's close enough to 50% for me that I wanted to dig a little further. And when you look at passing yards, they are down per game. Passing yards are down 11 yards per game on average. But if you look at just the last 3 games, it is nearly flat. It's down about a yard versus the 2023 average. And what that tells me is passing was down for the first 2 weeks, but has kind of leveled out in the weeks since in the NFL. What's interesting is if you look at rushing yards per game, they are up about 9 yards year over year, and that stayed consistent in the last 3 games. So what all of this informed me is that teams seem to be rushing more because it's working for the teams it's working for. If I looked at rush yards per attempt, though, it's up very slightly. It's about a foot, a third of a yard more. But then I dug down to it, and I think the reality is the teams that are good at rushing the football right now, it is really working for them. So the teams that have really improved and get a ton of yards per rush attempt, essentially, here's the list of teams that should be rushing a ton. Baltimore, Jacksonville, Arizona, Washington, Green Bay, Philadelphia, Seattle, and Indianapolis. All of these teams average at least 5 yards a rush attempt. So that is highly efficient. And it would make sense to me that these teams should be leaning into rushing more than passing. I want to point out in particular, Baltimore has averaged this season so far 6.1 yards per rush attempt. And then Jacksonville, shockingly, with 5.7, they are at the top of the league. If you just look at Jacksonville in particular, they averaged for all of 2023, 3.6 yards per rush attempt, and they're up to 5.7. So in summary, is rushing up and passing down? I would say rushing is very slightly up on average and passing is very slightly down, but it is so team by team specific and dependent. But that doesn't mean we can't dig into why this trend seems to be going this direction. A lot of it comes down to defensive adjustments. Everything is a cycle. The offense innovates, the defense innovates to stop that offense innovation, and then offense will innovate again. We have been in an offensive trend cycle that has been very focused on middle of the field passes. Can Cooper Kupp beat you up in the middle of the field? Because the adjustment that offenses made was that they wanted their best wide receivers, instead of sticking them on the outside with corners, they wanted to go after the slow linebackers in the middle of the field. Can we get a speedy guy on a matchup on a linebacker who was traditionally there to stop the run? And what happens is both defenses change philosophies, but then also players are developed and brought up through systems to do that. We are now seeing linebackers who spent their entire college careers having to stop the Cooper Kupps of the world, or whatever the equivalent for them was. Linebackers who now know how to cover the Travis Kelce's, the tight ends who run incredible routes and are receiving threats. Essentially, middle of the field merchants now are contending with linebackers who are built to contend with them. And if you just think about linebackers, even 5-8 years ago, they were these giant men. They were there to close that gap, stop the running backs of the world. We've all seen how much Saquon Barkley can lift. These linebackers are built to stop that. And that's not what we're seeing anymore. We're seeing really speedy guys who can make plays all over the field and stop these middle of the field merchants. So with that adjustment from defenses and the players who are playing certain positions on defenses, it is logical that offenses are making those same adjustments. And they're deciding, hey, well, we can actually run on this. If you're going to go weak at linebacker, I wonder if we can send Saquon Barkley up the middle. And it's not going to, and like everything, it's not going to work for everyone. Just because Kansas City has been able to use Travis Kelce the way that they've used Travis Kelce, they still needed the talent to do that. And I think that's what we're looking at with these rushing and passing trends. The teams that have the running backs and the offensive lines to be able to take advantage of what seems to be this trending direction of how defenses are looking to stop the offenses, though they are successfully able to do that. But everything in the NFL is so close that you're not going to be able to just make this adjustment because, that's the trend, that's how it's going. So this is where, despite as frustrated I am with the Philadelphia Eagles at this point, of all the years for Howie Roseman to decide I am now going to pay a running back, I'm really glad it's this year, because if this is the way the NFL is trending, I like when my team is ahead of the curve.
This past week, the NFL played in London, the NHL kicked off the season in Prague, and the NBA had preseason games in Abu Dhabi. It has us thinking, what makes an enjoyable international game for American sports leagues?
I've been thinking a lot about this, and I think I've distilled down a list of 4 important things that make an international game work for an American audience. Because I want to acknowledge that a big part of international games is that it's working for the country they're going into. But as an American sports fan, I thought it'd be interesting to identify why some of these are working for me and some of them are not. I do want to start with and acknowledge that the basis of how, if you're running the NFL and you are clearly the biggest sport in America, there is only so much more incremental growth, aka revenue, they can make in America. So it makes sense that they want to go international. And these international games is a big part of testing markets and doing that. So let's start with point number 1. I think the setting/fan environment is really important for an international game to work. I'm going to use the example of the Eagles playing the Packers in Brazil. And this is one where it felt slightly short for me. And part of that is because if this game was played in Philadelphia or if this game was played in Green Bay, both of these fan bases are so passionate that the environment of the game, whether you attended the game or are watching the game on TV, is so spectacular that international games are going to fall short. And now I didn't go to this game in Brazil, but watching it on TV, it didn't hit the setting mark for me. But if they sent other fan bases that don't have that raucous fan base already in their stadium, for example, they send Jacksonville a ton to London, there's a reason, there's a lower bar to hit. Talking outside of the NFL, for example, when hockey games are played and they're played outdoors, and when that happens, whether it's international or local, you get this beautiful setting. And that's a way it could really, really work. When you throw them in you throw these teams at an arena inside, it can fall short. I think the setting, whether the fans making it an incredible experience or the view, will be a major impact on whether or not that game is enjoyable and exciting to watch. And I started with this one because I think if that hits, the rest of what I'm going to talk about, it feels slightly less important. Because at the end of the day, sports are an entertainment. We are watching a TV show. We are watching some of the best reality TV there is out there with high stakes. It's exciting. You don't know what's going to happen. And you want the setting of your reality TV show to be exciting. You play a hockey game in front of the Eiffel Tower, that's going to be really cool and exciting. You play a hockey game internationally with a, middling crowd that's not super into it, just in a building that could be anywhere in the world, I'm probably going to be a little disappointed by your international game. That leads me to number 2, time of year / schedule. And I was really thinking about this one as it relates to the NHL games. Right now, the NHL is still in preseason. the day you all listen to this is the kickoff day for hockey. It is opening night on Tuesday, except for New Jersey and Buffalo, who played these random 2 international games that do matter. And I think putting regular season games internationally is a great call. I think that is way more fun than making them preseason games. But placing them where you place them on the calendar so far before any other actual activity is going on in the NHL makes it confusing for fans and hard to get excited about it. I think the MLB did a great job with where they placed the London series for the Mets Phillies this year, both in the time of year. They placed it in July, which is a great time of year to get people to travel to London, but also where they placed it in the schedule in relation to where the Mets and the Phillies had already played a couple games against each other. It's a rivalry. Okay, we're far enough into the season to understand who these teams are. And hey, now we're going to go to London. Timing in the schedule really matters. The NFL has also, for the most part, really figured this out. I think what they did with trying to kick off the year with Brazil made a lot of sense. I think placing it starting in the middle of the season for teams. We're really into the NFL at this point. Oh, now you're telling me I get to wake up extra early and watch another NFL game in another window? That's going to get me excited. Timing of the year and schedule really matter. Number 3, this is more specific if one of your teams is going abroad or one of your team's major competition, anything like that. But I think competitive advantage versus disadvantage matters to fans. I think people get very upset. My team has to go to Brazil, and then they have to fly back, and that's harder on them. I have to go to London. Every year the schedule drops, and it's like, thank God the Eagles don't have. Oh, thank goodness the Eagles don't have to go to London. I think competitive advantage and disadvantage. Does a team miss out on a home game versus an away game? Balancing all of that out matters to fans and their enjoyment and complaint levels for an international game. And last but not least, I'm calling this the authenticity versus cash grab category. And the things that fall under here are the players excited? Because for me, if the players are excited to go play abroad, I'm more likely to get hyped about it. Hearing most of the NFL players on Green Bay and Philadelphia not excited to go to Brazil made it less exciting because I'm there to support my team. How much hoopla and excitement is coming from the city we're going to? Did the league do a good job identifying this is a good market to go into and play a game, and they're going to be excited? Because if my team is traveling to, the Phillies are traveling to London, I want to know that there's people in London who are excited and want to watch the Phillies. And guess what? There are a ton. There's actually a Philadelphia bar in London that's pretty popular. And all of those things make me excited because I'm like, good for you. You get to see the team in your hometown. That's cool. But also, what are the leagues doing to create hoopla? Is there a fan zone? Are the mascots engaging in what's going on? All of this stuff matters for an authenticity of, hey, we're going here and we want you all to care. And that matters. And the last thing under authenticity is really that element of, does it take over the city? Can you make it a big deal? Because the bigger deal, I think, as an American watching international games, I want to watch other people get excited for the things I care about. And so when the leagues and teams and players are really leaning into that and they're excited, I'm going to get excited. So in summary, the trend of international games is going to continue. And overall, I'm excited that they are. As an American fan, sometimes you get really cool ways to watch sports. I might be able to travel to cool places to go see my team. But I loved being able to sit down and dissect, when is this working and when is it not for me? And really break down that it's the setting, the fans, the time of year, and that authenticity to it that makes a big difference in whether or not an international game works.
Nicole predicts a ball game. Nicole predicts the series. Give her almost no info and stats. We don't care if she doesn't know bat. Let us root for her predictions. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out in our prediction game.
Welcome to round 2 of the MLB playoffs, where my emotional stability and whole heart is on the line. But we'll put a pin in that, talk about Mets and Phillies in a moment. Because of the wildness of last week, I didn't get to do a single preview for anything playoffs yet. So context, it is Monday, October 7th. At this point, we've seen 2 games on the NL side and only 1 game on the AL side. When you're all listening to this, you'll have a little more information on what's going on in the AL. And I want to touch base on a couple of things I haven't been able to obsess over with you all, essentially, about all the series, and then we'll end with Mets Phillies. Kansas City Yankees. Oh my goodness, the first game of this series was so fun. I would say the headline of this series is Bobby Witt Jr., Aaron Judge. And it is so fun to watch the best of the best be the best of the best and be against each other. But this game was unreal. And if the rest of the games are anything like this, we're in for an unbelievably exciting series. I desperately hope it goes 5 games because I want to see every possible outcome. I just want to talk through the back and forth of this. I'm gonna do a little scoreboard reading, which is not great content, but bear with me. So Kansas City scores 1 run in the second. The Yankees scored 2 in the third. Kansas City scored 2 in the fourth. Then the Yankees scored 2 in the fifth. Then Kansas City scores 2 in the sixth. And then the Yankees also score 1 in the sixth. And then they score the winning run in the seventh to win the game 6-5. This matchup should just be offensive fireworks. And if you think the Kansas City did that well with Bobby Witt going 0 for 5. So if you have yet to tune into this series, or if you're like me and just kind of like rooting against the Yankees, tune in because there's going to be a Bobby Witt game. All right, let's move on to Detroit, Cleveland. Let me take a moment because this was something that was left on the cutting room floor because of the chaos of last week. Detroit. Oh my gosh, Detroit making the playoffs. I can't believe Detroit made the playoffs. There is so many ways to give you stats and cut up how improbable this Detroit Tigers run is. But the one I'm going to go with is their odds of making the playoffs on August 11th was 0.2%. And then you get into the emotional fan factor of this broke a 10-year streak for them of not making the playoffs. So it is such a fun team. They win the wild card round. Cleveland on the other side, Cleveland has incredible pitching. They have a bullpen that is lights out. But Detroit has that thing in baseball that you have to pay attention to, which is magic. So Cleveland won game 1 pretty dominantly. But this is a Detroit team that had to use their good pitchers against Cleveland's start of their rotation. So this is a Detroit team that had to use their pitchers in the wild card round. We're going up against the number 1 starter for Cleveland. I find the decisions that Detroit made, they've been making them all year. This Detroit team is playing well above its head right now, so it makes sense that they did the whole starter thing, and it also makes sense that it didn't necessarily work out because baseball's wild and it's not going to work out a lot of the time. So this is a lot of yammering to say. If you don't have a horse in this race, essentially, the Detroit Tigers, pick the Detroit Tigers. They are a fun team playing above their head right now, and they really do have the magic that everyone thinks the Mets have. I am so glad I waited to record this until after the San Diego Dodgers game too, because that game was wild. Oh, okay, so if you were looking at the storylines in the AL are exciting. I just told you about the Cinderellas in Detroit, and you have the great players in Kansas City and the Yankees. But on the NL side, we have 2 division rivals who hate each other and then 2 division rivals who hate each other. And you saw that hatred in the San Diego Dodgers game too. But I want to roll back. Game 1. Watching Ohtani be able to be Ohtani in the playoffs is probably a lot of fun for someone whose favorite team wouldn't have to face that to make it to the World Series. I guess we're going to have to go through Ohtani as the Phillies for the next 10 years. That sounds great. But I can objectively, with my objective baseball brain, say that was really cool. When Ohtani hit that home run in game 1, that was awesome. That was cool. It's so fun to see players who normally are reserved get that hyped up, and he slammed the bat down after hitting the home run. It was really fun. And then you fast forward to game 2, and this series is tied up 1-1 because San Diego smacked the Dodgers last night. But I don't actually want to talk about any of the on-field smacking. I want to talk about all the drama surrounding it. If I remember, I'll put it on the screen. If not, please go look up Profar robbing the home run, essentially out of a fan's hands, and then pretending like he didn't get it. And he let the Dodgers player run the bases. He let all those fans celebrate. He let the home run graphic go off, and then he was like, yeah, actually, I stole that home run. That is menacing, like, evil villain baseball shit that is so fun to watch when it's not against my team. Tatis, like, doing fake tears for Dodgers fans. It was evil villain shit. Again, not against my team. So fun to watch. And then, not to make this about the Phillies, but again, I make everything about the Phillies, so hey, look what I'm wearing today. I'm wearing the Phillies Winners Win shirt and a Fanatic hat. Like, I'm going to make this about the Phillies. But I'm a little tired of hearing how bad Philadelphia fans are, because it is not okay, no matter how upset you are, to throw things at players. And all Philadelphia does is we boo our own players because we're disappointed in them. But yeah, definitely not okay to be throwing stuff at players. We are spectators as fans. We are not participants at all. But this series being 1-1, and the emotional, the emotional stakes were super, super ramped up with San Diego Padres players leaning into being villains and how much they ended up crushing this Dodgers team. And now it goes back to San Diego, and it's a best of 3 with San Diego with the home field advantage. If you want one actual thought out piece of like analysis here, the thing about the Dodgers is their starting rotation is completely broken. Of their original starting 5, I believe only one starter remains, and he missed a lot of this season. Pitching matters a lot in postseason baseball. So if the Dodgers are going to win this, it's going to be because their offense can outscore San Diego. So only scoring 2 runs, admittedly an incredible pitching performance in game 2 by Yu Darvish. Going 7 in a playoff game is pretty much unheard of at this point as a starter. But the Dodgers have to hit, because their pitching is going to keep doing what they did, which is give up a ton of runs. Maybe not 10, but you never know.
Broad Street versus Broadway. But is it really a debate? Because voiceover man is Team Broad Street, and that makes the vote 2-1 on this show. Let's go, Birds.
All right, I'm going to talk for maybe 3 minutes about Mets Phillies, because I am emotionally unstable about it. I can objectively say that game 2 of Mets and Phillies was probably one of the best baseball games played. At least this playoffs, not in the last 5 playoffs. It was unbelievably exciting. It was an incredible game. I am not objective, though. It was an emotional turmoil and nightmare. And Nicole and I were texting each other, both distraught the entire time. Like, nope, this is where the Mets win it. Nope, this is where the Phillies win it. Except I was saying that about the Mets and she was saying that about the Phillies. So we both just felt awful about it. So, objectively, sounded like probably an exciting game for anyone else to watch, unless you were a Phillies or a Mets fan. I will say that so the series is tied up 2-2. I can't believe they lost the Wheeler game 1, but I also can believe it because the Phillies hitting just likes to go cold like that. If the end of this game 2 is the re-sparking of Phillies hitting, then I feel really good about this. There's, the Phillies have Nola on the mound for game 3, and if it goes to a game 5, it's home with Wheels starting. And that's a good position to be in. But that damn playoff pumpkin, I hate the Mets, and this would be emotional even if they were playing the Brewers, because I love my Phillies and there's a lot on the line, but playing a division rival who I hate as much as I hate the Mets is just... And I'm flying to go see Nicole on Friday, And if a game 5 is happening while I'm in the air, I don't know how I'm going to handle that. And I'm going to have to land and I'm going to see Nicole, and she's either going to be really happy and tell me that the Mets won, which will devastate me, or she's going to be devastated. So there's a lot emotionally on the line for this. I'll check back in next week. It is the first NHL games of the week because opening night for the NHL is Tuesday, the day this episode is released. So obviously, unlike baseball, the NHL doesn't play cohesive series. So the way that we have decided to do this is every week we're going to take one team in the West and one team in the East. We're going to predict and follow their weeks. We're starting this week on the East with Boston. I wanted to pick a team that was going to be playing on the Tuesday night game, playing enough games in this first week, but was also a good team that was interesting. Plus, when I decided this, Swayman had not signed yet, but he officially, the goalie of the Boston Bruins, will be Jeremy Swayman this week. I thought it'd be interesting for all these teams that we talk about early on. The Athletic has a model that I just find interesting as a reference point, and they predict that the Bruins will land at just over 93 points, with a 71% chance of making the playoffs. I think the question with the Boston Bruins isn't playoffs or no playoffs. The question with the Boston Bruins is playoffs with Stanley Cup chance or playoffs but early exit. And I think these first 4 games that they play in this first week of the season are going to give us a good indication of, is that point total low, or are they going to be one of the better teams in the league and above 100 points? So recap of their schedule this week. They're at the Panthers Tuesday to kick off this season. And then they're home on Thursday versus Montreal, home Saturday versus the Kings, and home Monday again against the Panthers. I think I have them going 2-2. I think they're going to split the Panthers games and drop, surprisingly, one of the other 2 against a lesser team, mostly because I just don't believe there's a way where your goalie holds out the entire offseason and he isn't just a little rusty to start. And then on the West, we're going to look at the Colorado Avalanche this week. They play 3 games starting Wednesday at Las Vegas, then home Saturday versus the Blue Jackets, and then home Monday versus Nicole's New York Islanders. Essentially, I picked this team because I want to watch the best player in the league play hockey in the first week of hockey. And I predict they're going 3-0.
Hot take.
All right, I snuck it in on the buzzer at the end of the show. We got to do some hot takes college football because, wow, this week was wild in upsets. I think just to acknowledge the fact that Vanderbilt beat Alabama clearly as a letdown game after Bama beat Georgia the week before. So overall, I just needed to touch base that it's interesting that this year, I'm not sure if there's a truly dominant college football team. And I really hope that that is the byproduct of the transfer portal and what's going on with NIL, is that there is more parity and more teams that are evenly matched. If we end the college football season without an undefeated team, I will be overjoyed. All these teams in the SEC, all these teams in the Big Ten, theoretically have to beat up on each other. And we're now at a point in the season where you could argue, is Texas a really dominant team? But they haven't played anyone besides Michigan, and Michigan doesn't look very good. Is Ohio State a dominant team? Well, they haven't really played anyone either, but they're going to Oregon this week, and Texas is going to Oklahoma. So right now, I'm not convinced that there is a truly, truly dominant, going to plow through to the playoffs team, which is exciting because in the new college football format, anything could happen in the playoffs. And if we end up with a national champion that is wild and out there because they were a 9 seed and there's more parity at the top, that would be incredible for this sport. And it's too early to say and call it that now. I'm just telling you all what I'm looking towards, which is more upsets would be great. More parity at the top of college football would be great. So fingers crossed that it's true. There's no truly dominant team in college football this year. Also, as an aside, the Miami Hurricanes being ranked as high as 6 because they're undefeated is absolutely wild and not real.
It's time for the final buzzer.
After Casty's walk-off hit in Game 2 for the Philadelphia Phillies, he ran immediately to his son Liam, and they had this incredible moment. F1's greatest of all time, Lewis Hamilton, who's also a partial owner of the Denver Broncos, actually took some time in between races to visit Denver Broncos practice. I somewhat alluded to it, but here's the photo of Pete Alonso with his playoff pumpkin. The Mets' ability to find more inanimate objects to rally around is just... I hate to say I really like it. I do. There are 2 college football uniforms that I really need to shout out this week. One, FIU did their Vice U Miami Vice themed jerseys that are definitely fun. More importantly, this big red helmet for Western Kentucky University, if they don't use this every week, it's a missed opportunity. It's one of the greatest things I've seen in sports. After the hurricane really devastated a lot of North Carolina, the Carolina Hurricanes hockey team decided that the proceeds from one of their preseason games was going to go completely to hurricane relief. They raised over $279,000 and counting for said hurricane relief. In case you didn't know, for the last 2 years, the offensive linemen of the Philadelphia Eagles have put together Christmas albums. And apparently we're getting a year 3, and Jason Kelce is involved, even though he's retired. We got this preview picture of him and Stevie Nicks for the album this year. Formula One announced a huge 10-year partnership with Louis Vuitton and their collection of brands.
Thank you for listening to another sports show. Thank you to our co-creators, Nicole Katz and Brianna Klein. Thank you to the four-legged executive producers and me, voiceover man. Make us one of your stars of the game by subscribing, liking the video, and turning on auto downloads. Make our day by leaving us a review on your podcast platform of choice and a comment on YouTube. Attend the postgame on social media for exclusive daily content. We'll be back to review the playbook every week. See you next Tuesday.
Today's another sports show, and it really enjoyed the Philadelphia Eagles bye week.